Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to explore something incredible? Today we're talking all about extended reality, XR for short, and how it can change the way people learn and train. It's really some mind-blowing stuff. We're going to be diving deep into a fascinating paper today. It's called Extended Reality XR for Training, and it's by Jörg-Owe. Ever pictured yourself in a virtual world, maybe learning to be a surgeon, or using augmented reality to fix some super complex machine, all without leaving the room? That's the kind of thing we're talking about today. But first, I think we need to start at the beginning. Can you walk us through the history of XR a little bit? Where did it all start?
Well, it all goes back a lot further than you might think, to the 1960s with this, It was called the Sword of Damocles, one of the very first head-mounted displays. Super primitive compared to what we have now, of course. But it was really the first step towards the immersive experiences we're seeing today.
Wow, that's pretty wild. From a bulky contraption like that in the 60s to the amazing tech we have today. It's come a long way.
For sure. And at first, XR was really limited to just gaming and simulations. But thanks to all the advancements in computer graphics and processing power, XR started breaking free and found its way into things like healthcare and manufacturing and even retail.
Yeah, and in Schneppat's paper, he actually mentions that the XR market is going to grow massively. It's projected to reach over $250 billion by 2028. That's huge. So it seems like organizations are really starting to understand just how powerful XR can be.
Yeah, they're definitely catching on. And it's no surprise, really, when you look at how much more effective XR training is compared to traditional methods. Schneppat's research really highlights that. I mean, think about traditional lectures and manuals and stuff. People only remember about 5 to 10% of the information. Pretty low retention rates. But with XR, studies are showing knowledge retention rates over 30%.
Wow, okay. That's a big difference. So before we go any further, can you break down the different types of XR used in training? Yeah. How are VR, AR, and MR different?
Yeah, of course. So let's start with virtual reality, or VR. This is the one that's fully immersive. You put on a headset, and you're suddenly in a completely different environment. It's like being inside a video game, but with real learning potential. This makes it perfect for things like flight simulation or surgical training. High-stakes scenarios. It lets you learn by actually doing and making mistakes, all without any real-world consequences.
Yeah, that's a really great point. It's like experiencing the real thing, but in a totally safe virtual space.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, so what about augmented reality? How does AR fit into the picture?
Well, think of AR as adding digital information on top of the real world, kind of like X-ray vision. But instead of seeing through things, you're seeing data or instructions right in your field of view. Say a technician is wearing AR glasses. They can see repair instructions right on the equipment. Or a surgeon could use AR to see a patient's anatomy during an operation.
That sounds incredibly useful. It's like having a guide right there with you. Okay, and what about mixed reality? So MR kind of combines the best of both worlds. It mixes the immersive experience of VR with the real-world integration of AR. So you get this environment where physical and digital objects can actually interact. Imagine wearing a headset that projects a 3D model of something you're building. You can manipulate the parts with your hands while still being able to see your real surroundings.
Wow, that's pretty cool. It's like having a blueprint come to life.
Okay.
Oh, I'm starting to get a sense of how each type of XR brings its own unique advantages. Now, Jörg-Owe talks about 5 key benefits of XR training. Improved safety, increased engagement and motivation, cost effectiveness, scalability and flexibility, and of course that impressive knowledge and skill retention we talked about earlier. Let's unpack those a little bit. I remember this one time I had to this safety training session. It was so boring. I literally zoned out halfway through. How does XR actually keep people engaged and motivated during training?
Oh, I totally get it. You're not the only one who sat through boring training sessions. Traditional training methods can be such a drag. Lectures, PowerPoints, all those old manuals.
Right.
But with XR, it's completely different. Learning becomes this active adventure, not just passively sitting there. Imagine learning about history by walking through ancient Rome in VR, or learning about anatomy by dissecting a virtual human body.
That's a huge difference from just reading a textbook.
Exactly. XR really taps into our curiosity and that desire to explore. It makes learning feel like a game.
That makes so much sense. And it's got to be way more effective, too. When people are engaged, they actually remember the information.
For sure.
It's like the difference between reading about a place and actually going there yourself. But let's be practical for a minute. Isn't XR training super expensive?
Yeah.
How can companies, especially smaller companies, actually afford to implement it?
It's a good question. The initial cost can seem pretty high, but it's important to think about the long-term return on investment. With traditional training, you have all those expenses. Travel, materials, instructor fees, and then there's the risk of accidents during hands-on training. All of that adds up. XR can actually help cut down those costs or even eliminate them altogether.
So it's not just about the upfront cost, it's about saving money in the long run.
Exactly. And in his paper, Schneppat found that companies often start seeing a return on their XR training investment within a year, and in the long term. The cost savings can be huge.
That makes sense. All right, so let's talk about how different industries are using XR for training. Schneppat mentions healthcare, manufacturing, and retail as some key examples. Let's start with healthcare. What kind of applications are you seeing in that field?
Oh, healthcare is a really interesting area for XR. Imagine medical students learning anatomy by dissecting a virtual human body without needing actual cadavers. There are programs like holoanatomy from Microsoft that are already doing this.
That's incredible. It's like a virtual anatomy lab.
It is, and it goes even further than that. XR is being used to simulate surgeries, so students can practice complex techniques in a safe environment before ever stepping into a real operating room.
It's like a flight simulator, but for surgeons. So XR is definitely changing medical education. But what about actual patient care? Is it having an impact there too?
Absolutely. XR is making waves in patient treatment as well. VR-based psychotherapy, for instance, is showing a lot of promise for treating phobias and anxiety disorders. Patients can experience virtual environments that trigger their fears, but in a controlled setting, so they can gradually overcome those anxieties.
It's amazing how XR can create those kinds of environments. It would be impossible to do in real life.
Right. And it's not just limited to mental health. XR is also being used for physical rehabilitation. For example, stroke patients can use VR games to improve their motor skills and coordination. These games make rehab more engaging and motivating, which often leads to better results.
So it's kind of like turning therapy into a game, but with real benefits. Okay, let's move on to manufacturing. How is XR being used to train workers in that industry?
Well, manufacturing is another area where XR is really proving its worth. Schneppat gives some examples in his paper. Companies like Boeing and Airbus are using XR to train workers on how to assemble aircraft. Workers wear AR headsets, and they can see step-by-step instructions right on the physical parts. It's like having a real-time blueprint guiding them through the process.
Wow, that's impressive. You can't get that level of precision and efficiency with traditional training.
Nope. And companies like Ford are using VR to create simulations of entire factory floors, so workers can practice operating machines and learn safety protocols, all in a safe virtual environment.
It sounds like a game changer for onboarding and safety training.
For sure.
It's really amazing how XR can bridge that gap between the virtual and the real.
Yeah.
Especially in a complex environment like a factory. Are there any other applications of XR in manufacturing besides training?
Oh yeah, absolutely. XR is also being used for things like product design and development. Engineers can use VR to visualize and interact with 3D models of products before they build any physical prototypes. This helps them identify design flaws and make improvements early on, which saves a lot of time and money.
So XR is not just about training, it's about making the whole design and production process more efficient.
Exactly.
It's about creating a more agile manufacturing ecosystem.
It really is. And even remote maintenance is getting a boost from XR. Imagine a technician on an oil rig thousands of miles offshore. They're wearing an AR headset. And an expert back at headquarters can see exactly what they're seeing. The expert can guide the technician through repairs in real time, using AR overlays to point out specific parts.
It's like having a virtual mentor right there with you, even in the middle of nowhere.
Pretty much.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, let's finish up with retail. How is XR changing the shopping experience?
Retail is another area where XR is having a big impact. Virtual try-ons are becoming really popular. Shoppers can try on clothes, makeup, even furniture, all virtually, without having to physically touch anything.
Yeah, it's all about convenience.
It is, and it also gives retailers valuable data about customer preferences.
It's like having a personal fitting room that you can take anywhere. What about the in-store experience? Is XR changing that too?
Oh, definitely. Imagine walking into a store and using an AR app on your phone to see product demos and customer reviews. You could even play interactive games related to the products.
It sounds like a much more engaging and personalized shopping experience.
That's the idea.
It's like bringing the best of online shopping into the physical store.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen how XR training can be used in all sorts of industries. It's clear that this technology has the potential to revolutionize the way we learn and work. But like any new technology, There are always challenges to overcome.
Yeah.
Schnippel mentioned some of these limitations in his paper. Can you talk a bit about the hurdles that XR still faces?
Sure, one of the biggest challenges right now is the cost. XR hardware and software can be pretty expensive, especially for smaller organizations or individuals.
Yeah, that's a common problem with new technologies.
Yeah.
The early adoption phase is always more expensive. Hopefully, as it becomes more widespread, the cost will come down.
I think that's likely. Another challenge is finding people with the technical skills to create and maintain XR training content. You need specialized knowledge to develop those immersive simulations and AR experiences. Not everyone has those skills.
Right. It's not enough to just have the hardware and software. You need people who know how to use them effectively. What of the user experience itself? How do you make XR training intuitive and engaging for the learner?
Yeah, user experience is so important for any type of training, and XR is no exception. One challenge is designing interfaces that are both easy to use and informative. You want users to be able to move around the virtual environment naturally and interact with things easily without getting frustrated.
So it's kind of like designing a video game. It needs to be challenging,
Yeah.
but not so hard that people give up.
Exactly. And then there's a challenge of creating content that's both engaging and relevant to the learning objectives. You don't want to just create a cool VR experience. It actually has to teach something valuable.
It has to be both fun and educational.
Right. And finally, we need to think about how to measure the effectiveness of XR training. How do we know it's actually working? What metrics should we be tracking to prove that it's worth the investment?
That's a great point. It's one thing to create an amazing XR training program, but you need to be able to show that it's making a difference.
Exactly. We need to measure things like knowledge retention, skill development, and actual performance improvement. It's all about using data to demonstrate the value of XR training.
So it's not just a magic solution. It requires careful planning, execution, and evaluation.
Absolutely. It's a powerful tool, but it needs to be used strategically.
Okay, so let's talk about the future of XR training. Schneppet suggests that XR is going to become even more important in the way we learn and work. Where do you see this technology heading in the next few years?
I think the future of XR training is incredibly exciting. As the technology gets better and more affordable, it's going to become more integrated into our lives. One big trend is the development of more realistic and immersive experiences.
What's driving that trend?
Well, things like haptics, for example, with better haptic technology. Users will be able to feel virtual objects. Imagine a surgeon being able to feel the resistance of tissue during a virtual surgery, or a mechanic feeling the weight of a virtual engine part.
That would be amazing. It would take virtual reality to a whole new level. What other advancements are we likely to see?
AI is becoming more prominent in XR training. AI can personalize the learning experience and provide feedback in real time. It's like having a personal tutor right there with you.
That's really cool. And as XR hardware becomes cheaper, we can expect to see it being used in more and more sectors.
Definitely. Education, healthcare, manufacturing, the possibilities are endless.
It's exciting to think about how XR could make learning more accessible for everyone.
It really is. And then there's the potential for XR to merge with other technologies, like blockchain and the Internet of Things. Imagine XR training programs that use real-time data from IoT sensors, or using blockchain to keep track of learner credentials.
Wow, it sounds like we're on the verge of a whole new era of learning and development. Jörg-Owe Schneppat's paper really captures that sense of potential.
It does. XR has the power to change how we learn, how we work, and how we interact with the world.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into extended reality for training. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the history of XR to the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. A big thank you to our expert for joining us and sharing their insights.
A pleasure.
And to our listeners. We'll leave you with this question. How do you think XR could change your field of work or study? What possibilities are you most excited about? We encourage you to keep exploring the world of XR. You never know what you might discover. Until next time, happy learning.